Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I don't know when you're watching this, but you know what I do know? We have a very exciting show for you today. I'm Roth, Cornet. Dan Murrell's here. I love that Ed Greer, but you know what, you guys? We have Winston Duke here. Winston Duke himself. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Black Panther is out on Blu-ray, and with that in mind, we're going to talk to Mr. Winston Duke about the film, among other things. We have some fan questions. We have plenty of questions for you. My first question for you, and this is true curiosity, is that what has this ride, this meteoric ride, been like for you? The success of this movie is profound. And so what has it been like for you to go through this journey with the film?
Well, first of all, it's really great to be attached to this film where it's just like such good content. And such good content that makes it really easy to talk about it. It's so easy to be attached to something like this because I feel like I've been having some of these conversations for years and like what like the film and entertainment industry, what that landscape could look like if we kind of have artists back in the seat being creative instead of it just being business people making artistic decisions. You know what I mean? And I think that's really something that's really powerful about Black Panther is that you got Ryan Coogler, who's this like auteur director, you know, involved in every single aspect, writing, directing, all the creative like spaces within the film. And you have him, Nate Moore, who comes from more of the business sense, but trusts Ryan Coogler's vision, you know what I mean? To like really bring this artistic thing to life. And it makes it really easy for me to talk about because it's chock full of stuff. You know what I mean? Chock full of experience, chock full of meaning, chock full of all these things. Yeah, so that's really fun. Then like the other aspect of this is like this cultural phenomenon, right, that you mentioned. The cultural phenomenon of this meaning so much to so many people. People seeing grandeur and royalty attached to black bodies that you do not get to see in the media. And you do not get to see that not just in the media, but not in the news. You don't get to see that anywhere. Like I'm seeing it play out right now with the royal baby and the royal, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I've seen that, and I've seen that with like, you know, the Middle East and Chinese culture and Eastern culture, Southeastern, and you know, but I've not seen it with like the African continent. And people know that history has existed, but they've never gotten to see it, and they've only gotten to see it as, you know, it's been so far removed that the only time you've seen it has been if a creative sensibility is using it as a joke to say, hey, it doesn't exist. Like coming to America, like that's technically like saying, hey, look at this, look how funny this is because it doesn't exist. Right. Do you know what I mean? But now you're actually having it taken seriously. You're having all these characters who are controlling their lives and get to be really exist within a spectrum of human experience. They don't just get to be bad or get to be good. Like if you remember the film, T'Chaka's a really good king, but it did some messed up stuff. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to live the mistakes of my father. You know what I mean? And you see T'Challa, who technically he could have just said, hey, I know what's going on, and like come to Killmonger and been like, I want to welcome you in, and I'm sorry like this happened. But he was like, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? What do you want?
Well, that's the interesting thing about the movie is that he, T'Challa, throughout a lot of the movie is defending privilege. Yeah. Defending like, oh, I got this because I was born with this. Right. And it's the mentality that a lot of people in the real world have, and we know who we're talking about, that have this like, oh, well, I earned this because I was born this way. My ancestors did this, so I get this. And it's really about is dismantling that. And obviously Killmonger representing the black people who are abandoned in America. You know what I mean? It's very fascinating.
And a very extreme, you know, an extreme take and an extreme narrative that what's beautiful about this film is it doesn't tell you anything about this is a decision. this is what you should think. It just engages you in a really cool conversation. So he says, these are these two opposing ideas. These are the two opposing different ways of looking at like this conversation and what happens when they clash. You know what I mean? And then you splice in like some really cool international hopping around and like explosions and gadgets and all that stuff, and you make it really palatable for people to say, hey, I'm just enjoying this movie because it's fun to watch too.
I mean, the very fact that a lot of some of the globe hopping was going to places where African artifacts were just behind some glass for some people to ogle, and that's a major plot point, something that was stolen and ogled for years, and now it's a major thing that's going to be used today.
Yeah.
That's interesting too.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. And it's all these things that I'm saying, it makes this film so easy to talk about because it engages us in all these conversations. Just even hearing that Ryan in that scene where they're in the casino and they're walking down the stairs, and he said, you know, T'Challa flanked by Okoye and Nakia with the red and the green and the black. I wanted that to evoke the Pan-African flag. So even that being that loaded, it just makes it really easy for you to go, oh, wow, I didn't really see that, but subliminally I kind of get that. And that's a really interesting thing. What is that? So even if you're not exposed to it, if you're not like aware of it, you're still going to go, what is that? What does that mean? Oh, wow, that's really interesting. And it engages you in a lot of conversation, you know, directly and indirectly. And I find it just wonderful.
What was it like? Because I do a show with Roth every week where we look at the box office. And so, you know, week one, obviously, huge opening, and we're looking at even the daily numbers. You know, Black Panther's doing things that a movie doesn't usually do. It was building day by day. But even, I mean, we talked about it, week 2, week 3, week 4. 2 weeks ago, it was back into the top 5. We talked yesterday, it's been 13 weeks. It's still in the top 10. What was it like, not just, you know, the opening of the movie, which, you know, so many comic book movies open huge and then kind of tail off, but to see going 3 weeks in, a month in, 6 weeks in, 2 months in, the fact that this movie was still connecting with audiences, it was still resonating with people. People were going back to see it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Kind of like what you guys were saying, because it has so many things on screen that have never been done in a not just a comic book movie, but a lot of mainstream movies before.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's telling us that this movie is going to stand the test of time. I think the movie is going to still be refreshing 10 years from now, I think, because what you're doing is it's not formulaic. Like I said, you're engaging your audience. And to some degree, I feel like this movie really, it really works in that long history of what comic books have been doing, which is engaging you in conversation. You know what I mean? Challenging, you know, societal norms and saying, hey, what do you think? Where do you stand on this issue? You know, Spider-Man having those great themes of like great power and great responsibility. Same thing that some of these Wakandan characters are dealing with. What's your responsibility? What's your civic duty? What does it mean to be a citizen of a country? Like, how do you hold your country accountable? How do you save it? How do you hold yourself responsible for your lineage and your past and past actions, and how do you move into the future? And
it even touches on like nationalism, i.e. Okoye is really down with a sort of a nationalist way of thinking, and whereas Nakia is like, nah, man, my country's been taken over by a despot. The law doesn't apply anymore.
Exactly.
And she was in the minority for a while, and then they rose up and became the majority.
What does it mean to be a citizen? Like, I save my country. I don't just serve my country. I save it. You know what I mean? I think that's at the center of your film. Like, these really strong questions are there, you know?
We're going to pepper in just a few of these fan questions as well, make sure we get to them. But there's so much to talk about with this film. I think this was, many of us, it was our most anticipated Marvel movie because of our faith in the specificity of Ryan Coogler's direction.
Yeah, of course.
And this is, look, comic book movies have things to say, but this really has something to say. So I think that's perhaps why we're seeing such a success. But Amy does want to know the differences, I'm curious about this too, between Ryan Coogler and the Russo brothers' directorial style.
Well, Ryan Coogler, I could speak a lot more on that because I was with that project for maybe 5 months. For Avengers Infinity War, I think I was with that project for maybe a week and change. So, like, those guys are great. The Russo brothers are fantastic, really talented guys. But when we came onto that set, they gave us a lot of agency and a lot of reign, because they said, we weren't on that set with you guys creating Wakanda. We're going to defer to you on, you know, taking the reins on what to do. We've written some things in, but if you think you could, you know, amp it up or like make it so much more specific, please, like, you do it and we'll follow your lead. So they really gave us room to kind of bring in the thing that we made, because we really created something and felt a lot of onus. On the other hand, going back to Ryan Coogler, he's very hands-on, very confident on set, also very inclusive. So if you have an idea, he's saying like, yeah, cool, I'll listen to it. Oh yeah, that's gonna make it. I like that, let's do that. He listens, he has kind of, I've always said he has a very almost musical nature to how he directs. Like sometimes he's like not even watching, sometimes he'll just be like, all right, cool. Yeah. And he like listen first, and he like listen to the scene, and then he'll come in with like some of the most astute, you know, directional notes that you're like,
trying to catch the beat.
Yeah, he catches the beat. He's like, yeah, cool. And then boom, and then it's magic. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's a real musicality to his directing style. Also, just to know that he's such a young guy and he's bringing that voice of this age into these large spaces. It's something almost tangible, you know what I mean? You could feel it on set, and it was really cool. I feel like those are like the main differences that I could see and feel. But I have to be honest with you, I didn't spend too much time with the Russos, but the Russos are really great.
So we also have from TJ Dex, which, and this is a little bit more fun, which Marvel character do you want to strip the powers from and go to one-on-one in combat with? Your character, obviously, not you personally.
Okay, not me personally. I'm like, even without superpowers, some of these Marvel people, they're like they know all the martial arts of like different galaxies.
I think you could take Ant-Man.
Ant-Man for sure.
Right now, as Winston.
Paul Rudd, you can beat up Paul Rudd.
As Winston, I'm going after Paul Rudd. After Ant-Man, I'm taking him down.
We're on notice, Paul Rudd.
Yeah. That's a good one. I'll take that. That's a good assist. That's a good assist. I'll take that.
It's good.
Lando wants to know, I've got a question.
Lando.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Lando. Well, officially, it's Lando from the Bassavand. I've got a question. Have you had to correct anyone on the sound that you were making in the film? Because a lot of people went for woof instead of umph.
I don't correct anybody on anything. You enjoy, it's your movie. I did my part. You spent your money. You could say whatever you want at this point. Like, the chant that we were doing in particular is Mayafa. So Meliafa. And when you say it quickly, it comes Mayafa. And I've heard everyone say Masa, ooh, or Mafa, ooh, or something like that. I'm like, it's all good. Like, you're making the sound. You're making the sound. Like, it's all good. I'm cool. It's making it into your home.
Can I do a piggyback question on that? How many times have people come up to you and said, "It's challenge day" or something like that? Like a lot.
A lot.
Is that the Rick James pitch of this situation?
Actually, the thing that they do more often isn't even it's challenge day. It's the ooh, just like randomly everywhere I go. So I'll be like in Whole Foods or in like Trader Joe's, and someone will be like, ooh. I'm like, all right, I'm a man. I'm just shopping. I didn't come here for you to hoot at me today, sir. But yeah, it's great, and the fandom that's around this thing is just, it's awesome, and everyone is respectful. And to be honest, man, shout out to the fans of Marvel and these comic books and all this stuff. You guys go hard for what you love. And I've been to San Diego Comic-Con, and you guys are camping out. Sometimes you're spending hundreds of dollars on like getting a hotel room, and you're still sleeping on the street trying to get into like Hall H. And it was a lot of energy, you know what I mean, and a lot of attention. But I loved being at like Comic-Con because it was really earnest. Like you could tell that everybody was there, and they were there to like support you, and they were there to support the work and support like the telling of a cool story because they love it. So yeah, shout out to the fans who do this stuff, man.
Was that the first? Because I'd heard some reports from last year at Comic-Con that was the first time that, I don't know if you were that group, that anyone had seen footage from the. Was that the first time you'd seen footage from the movie?
Don't show us anything.
And what was it like to see that for the first time in like this amazing?
We all lost it. We all lost it because we were seeing it for the first time with the fans. 1, 2. We've been acting against a green or blue screen for months. So all the stuff that you're seeing there with the rest of the Wakandans with their Kimoyo beads, they're just like looking at their wrist and like hoping that their eye line is in the right place. Right. You know what I mean? They're like, yes, my love. You know? And like we're all just like entering into this space with a lot of faith, you know what I mean? That we're doing the right thing and that it's gonna translate. So when we saw what the mountains looked like fully, and like what after they do some color correction and all this stuff, because it's all so different on the day, you're like, oh, that's what we made. That's what I'm part of.
Well, and just one tiny piggyback on that. How did it feel to look so powerful on screen? I'm not even talking about how big you are.
What you mean on screen? On screen? What are you talking? What is this?
Okay,
what is this?
In real life, you could beat up Paul Rudd.
What is this?
In real life, you could beat up Paul Rudd, but on screen, you could beat up anybody that doesn't have the strength of the Black Panther. I mean, you were just smacking dudes 15 feet. You know what I mean? So like, how does that feel?
What's that training like too?
Well, first of all, it was beautiful to see it. I mean, and that's him. There's a scene where on the battlefield in the final, when I come in with the guys to help save the day, and some border tribe dude runs at me, and I just like, they like ratchet him to the ground. I was like, that is ridiculous. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so seeing that, it's every childhood dream come true where you're jumping off of high stuff and screaming. And you're like, geez, man, I'm like actually a superhero. You know what I mean? And that was really cool. And then repeat your question.
I was just curious, the training, because you can't fight realistically, but you have to also fight realistically in a non-realistic way.
Yeah. So, I mean, great. So for me, it was really getting specific on what I wanted the character to be like and how I wanted him to fight. So I just kind of told this story in another interview, but you'll be like the second person to really hear this.
And we'll be the best.
Yeah, you'll be the best. You'll be the best. But M'Baku's fighting style was a lot more like close quarters, smaller, like faster, boom, 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 boom things. And I was like, that's not the dude. Like, if you look at, because I was familiar with, you know, we try to talk to as many people as possible. And once I saw the costume, I'm like, his costume he's a tank. He's wearing these big greaves on his wrists. He's wearing this big chest plate. Like, he's built for action. He doesn't need to be fast. He just needs to be effective. So, like, he could take 5 hits. He hits you once, it's game over. So I was like, why isn't he, let's just do some more bigger swings and some bigger hits.
And more range.
And just range. So it's like, if he gets close to you, it's game over.
Right.
So you might want to like keep him at bay. You know what I mean? I think that's why he has some of the armor, because it's like boom, 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 boom. He could run through some stuff, and then he's just like gets really, so the fight changed for me once we had some other conversations, like the stunt team, who was just amazing, and they're like, okay, that works. And we worked on smaller fight vignettes that on the day could change. So We'd be like, let's use this thing that we have over here. Use this because today we're on the field running uphill. I like the way like these moves work and like these hits. Let's get some guys and bring that in. Remember that piece we worked on like 3 weeks ago? Let's use that one combined with the other one we worked yesterday and make something new. We'd make things up like on the spot.
Well, I want to make sure that you guys get your questions in as well. We have 1 or 2 more fan questions, but...
Oh, I was just curious because they're always, there's always been talk about with Chris Evans, like, oh yeah, Sebastian Stan, maybe they're grooming him to be the next Captain America, and they always talked about like, with Natalie Portman's doing the Thor movies, so like, maybe she's the next Thor. Yeah. Like, did you ever kind of whisper, go up to Kevin Feige, like, if Chadwick ever gets tired of doing it?
No, man, we didn't have any conversation. That's like
I'm just saying.
That's the first one.
You got like 8 to 10 years, and then
you never know.
You never know.
Mean, honestly, man, I feel like the conversations that were being had on that set was just like, how do we make this like as good as we can, like this moment? Because we were just like every day we were fighting to make this just like the tightest story you could imagine. Mm-hmm. And we'd be like, okay, I just made a reference here, Hanuman, then there's Bast, then does each of the tribes have their own god? And does that mean that there's a pantheon of gods? And how do those gods interact? So how does Bast feel about Hanuman? Because these are, you know what I mean? So,
well, I heard you say in an interview that
about that. I'm sorry.
No,
I
heard you say in an interview that like the Panther is kind of a sneak. The Panther's sneaky, the Panther's stealthy, whereas the Gorilla's like, look, I'm gonna warn you, and then I'm gonna break you off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like if you don't listen, right, you're gonna catch these hands real quick. But it's really. Yeah, so the Panther it comes to you. They can be sneaky. The Panther works under the cover of darkness. You know what I mean? And I feel like you get a lot of that when you're seeing the images of how like Black Panther is even introduced in the beginning of the movie. It's like cloak and dagger. It's it's stealth based. Meanwhile, the Jabari come in and they're chanting. And the idea is that they potentially chanted the whole way down from the mountain. Do you know what I mean? And it's like they alert you to their actions, and they're very forward and they're very direct. Just like when you interact with M'Baku in his throne room, he's very direct. Mm-hmm. He's very smart, and he wields it and wields your ideas about who he is, but he's very direct. And we used those ideas about those animals as a sense of pride, but specificity for the storytelling,
That's, as a New Yorker, I appreciate directness. So I appreciate that about. Yeah, it's interesting. To Dan's question, though, I think one of the reasons that audiences are responding so much to this film is because it does feel very self-contained. It feels really like Ryan Coogler was allowed to deliver his vision to the world without a lot of interference from the studio. Now, I know that's a magical reality that probably doesn't exist. There's a negotiation, but did it feel, even though you're working on this really big film, did it feel in that sense that the storytelling was so contained that he was allowed to really fully drive the...
So I wasn't in any of the rooms where they gave any of those notes. What I can say for things that I could glean off being on that set was that everyone had the best intention. So everyone was there. Nate Moore was on set every single day. And he's an executive from the company. And he's there watching and collaborating and in conversation with Ryan and just helping. So everyone was there to help. I feel like it might not have. That would be my assumption. It just didn't feel like it was like interference. It's like it's a big conversation. And like, what do you know about the comics? What can we draw from here? What can we pull from here? What can we do from this? And everyone was always in conversation. And I think what's really powerful about Ryan Coogler's directing style and just person is I feel like he relies on a collective conscious. You know what I mean? He relies on this artistic collective conscious. And he pulled a cast. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Lupita Nyong'o's from Kenya by way of Mexico, or if you want to say Mexico by way of Kenya, you know what I mean? Daniel Kaluuya is British but African descent. Both Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan are American. Letitia is British through Guyana. So you have just like the entire diaspora, or like aspects of the diaspora, all contributing into this film and into the pot of like creative,
like the culture of
juice.
Wakanda does.
Yeah, it really
because
is.
They're pulling from all these areas and centralizing it. Yeah,
exactly. And I read this. I wasn't sure about this, but I read that, you know, Donald Glover and his brother read the script before, you know, all that, and gave some notes. And it's like, this guy's pulling from his community, his artistic community. And I feel like Marvel and Disney was part of that community. So they were always like adding into the pot, like, hey, we could use this. This is another resource. We could use this. So that's what that set felt like.
Well, I know, unfortunately, we have to let you go. We could talk with you all day long, and we can't talk. You'll have plenty of Marvel movies in the future. We can't talk about that. But are you planning, just real last question, to do kind of a balance of those things? You know, we've heard that you're attached to some other projects. Is it going to be kind of a big one, small movie, or?
We'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah. You want to tell me the rest of your 10-year plan?
I can't really confirm. I can't really confirm anything at the moment. But what I can say, you know, I want to just keep interrogating what that everyman story, that everyman narrative looks on my 6'5" frame. You know, and I don't get to see very many 6'5" dark-skinned everymen, and I want to explore that space in this film and television and storytelling landscape. So those are some of the roles that, you know, I feel I'll be having a career filled with.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ed and Dan. You guys available today for your viewing pleasure. Also, if you want to go to the movie theater, but you can get this today. It's a great movie to see in the theater a couple of times, but also on Blu-ray. So you guys should check that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will hopefully see you again.
Well, yeah, invite me back.
Anytime.
Well, great.
Standing invitation.
I'd love that.
We'll see you tomorrow in
Yeah.
that case. And we will definitely see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today.